Welcome back, coders, to another quick video here. Today we're looking at another game on the Asus ROG Ally, and that game is Death Stranding. Quite a demanding game, but as we're going to find out in this quick video, this game performs remarkably well on the Asus ROG Ally, even when you go absolutely ham on the settings. So we'll talk a little bit about why, and we'll go over my recommendations for different power profiles, as well as my miracle 13-watt power profile, which I really prefer to run lots of games in when I'm playing handheld. Surprisingly good performance out of it, and you get a lot better battery life than even the 15-watt. Right off the bat, you can see we're getting a pretty consistent 60 FPS here, and that is with pretty much everything maxed out. No, actually, it is everything maxed out. So we'll look at the settings here in a second, but right off the bat, yes, we're getting a little bit of dips below 60, but for the most part, we're going to be staying right around that line. So I would say for this game, actually, it runs remarkably well. We're at the 30-watt turbo mode, so just keep that in mind. This is the full bore system running as high and fast as it can. So let's go ahead and quickly go to my settings. I'm at 1080p. I'm at VSync off, which I force inside the AMD settings to universally on for everything, because that's the best setup for FreeSync displays. Maximum frame rate is 240, just so we don't run into any bottlenecks, which we obviously won't. Graphics quality, I have it on custom, but it's just because I've set things even higher than what the very high preset is. So model details are very high. Memory for streaming is high. We're running it at right around 4 gigs of memory. I have the whole system set at the 4 gig memory thing. That seems to be the best situation. It can scale easily there. Shadow resolution high, ambient occlusion on, screen space reflections on. One thing I did notice running this on AMD hardware is there is no FSR2 option, so that's something to keep in mind. However, it does have fidelity effects CAS, which is great. So with this in combination with the AMD RIS, which I highly recommend everybody takes advantage of on almost any game you run, because it's going to just make everything look a lot better on this 1080p screen. Sharpness at 0, depth of field on, motion blur on. So everything is just the highest you can set it. We're getting a consistent 60 FPS across the board. This is a very, very playable experience, and it looks great on the system. They're not completely locked to 60, so we'll drop into the 50s and stuff like that, but on this VRR display, you really can't feel it. So highly recommend that everybody sticks to those for this setting. Real quick, we're going to switch over to the performance mode. Sorry. And just see what the impact is right there. So you can see by switching to the performance mode, and we are overclocking a little bit to 20 watts, so just keep in mind that this will be a little bit more impacted at 15 watts once it settles down, but we'll look at that too. We're going to want to change the settings. So 45 FPS is a little bit under the VRR window, which is 48. So we really don't want it to fall below 48. That's the goal whenever I'm doing this. So I'm going to go into graphics settings. Keep it at 1080p. There's no reason to lower it until we get into the more aggressive power profiles. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and just take this down to the default settings. Default is the PS4 settings, which still looks really, really great. And honestly, doesn't dramatically impact the visual experience, but right there we're right back up to, hold on, let it settle a little bit. Suddenly we have way worse performance than we had before. I'm not 100% sure why. Let me go ahead and just double check that everything reset correctly. Oh, you know why? This is something to remember every time you do this. It turned fidelity effects CAS off, which I recommend always using because it does give you about 20 FPS at times back. So let's go ahead and see how this runs now. Yeah, and right there, we're back up at the 50, right above that 48 line for the most part. And this is on the 15-watt profile. Definitely doing a lot better. Still not quite where I would want to play it, so I might lower a couple settings just to get over that line. But as you can see, we're having a good experience without it being... This is not a super fast-paced game, so as long as you have a nice, smooth visual experience, that's what we're looking for. So for the 15-watt setting, I'm going to recommend default with a couple things turned down. We'll go ahead and have those in the description as well. right here, one of the next areas that we're going to want to try is a much lower profile. So we're going to go down to low for this one. And I believe we're going to have to sit at 720p to get this taken care of. By the way, if you want to go to low, you're going to get well above 60 FPS on this. Sorry, Fidelity FX cast got turned off. We have finally settled down to the 15 watt, so this is something to keep in mind. About 2 minutes of boost for every single power profile that you have. So right here, yeah. We set things to low. It still looks really good. Fidelity FX casts on. We're going to stay in that 40 FPS range, which is pretty solid at 15 watts. I am getting more performance issues than I was getting last night when I was playing this, so I'm not 100% sure what the situation is with that, but here we are. Okay, we're going to try, we're going to try to take it down to my 13 watt profile, which is where I would recommend everybody play if they're going to do custom wattage. So as you can see, that hits it pretty hard. So what we're going to do is actually we're going to go back up to default settings and go down to 720p. I'd like the default settings with Fidelity FX cast on. At 13 watts, let's see what we can get. Not bad at all. We're still at 40 FPS. Again, this game runs better on AMD hardware than it does on NVIDIA, and this is without upscaling technology really, besides the Fidelity FX cast, which is obviously not as advanced as FSR2. Now you're going to get a lot more sub-pixel breakup. This is where you may make the choice to turn off RIS, but I think the clarity is very helpful. So I'd still recommend you run it there. This is at 13 watts. I know it's displaying 12 watts. The power profile set to 13 watts. And we're getting a good solid 40 FPS, which is a great experience in my opinion. So I would highly recommend that you check this game out. Those are my different recommended settings, but frankly, play this one plugged into a wall. You're gonna have no issues. Silent mode is not really playable. You could probably lock it. Actually, let's see if we can lock it to 30 FPS if we were playing on silent. This is on medium, so we're probably going to have to go actually all the way down to low. Again, remember that this is actually at 720p with Fidelity FX cast on. We're going to just try to lock it at 30. And here we go. Can we get to 30 FPS locked? No. Silent mode is one of those modes that I'm just not going to recommend for almost any game unless you're playing very light indie games, or trying to emulate old stuff like GBA and stuff like that. Nintendo, nothing crazy. 10 watts is just starving that GPU for enough power that we're going to struggle a bit. So hope that was insightful for you guys. Make sure to like the video if you like these settings videos and you like a little bit of a deep dive into some gameplay. Honestly, I've been really impressed with how this handles so many different games. We're going to go into our options, just reset it and make you see the really pretty settings that we get at very high. And we're going to get Fidelity FX cast on, and we're all good there. And we should be good to go. Oh, but we're still 720p, so you're probably going to see. Oh, and I hard locked it at 30. Oh, man. I forgot. I got to change a lot of things when I do all these things. Go back to 1080p. Get up there. Doesn't really matter. Yeah, we'll just set the maximum frame rate to 120 so we don't have to waste a bunch of time. We're not going to go over 120 in this scenario, but you can just see this game runs really well on AMD hardware. I highly recommend everybody check it out. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications, and as always, stay classy, coders.